Hello, everyone. Welcome to Semaphore Summit 2025. My name is Darko. I'm one of co-founders and CTO of Semaphore, and I'm excited to talk to you about this year's main event, going open source. As you can imagine, it's a huge achievement for us, and the whole team has been working incredibly hard over previous year to make this happen. So, let's dive straight in. With such a huge release, we have to start with a little bit of history. So, in 2010, while we were just a consulting company of 5 people, we installed Jenkins for the first time. And the installation itself wasn't that bad, but the problems appeared later. We needed to upgrade plugins, we needed to scale, and it worked until it didn't. And I'm sure that many of you who worked with Jenkins had that experience. So what we thought is, okay, if we have this problem, there must be many, many other people who are facing the same. And we started making Semaphore. So the idea was to create a software, a tool that was super easy to use, and it's just pleasure to work day in, day out. And as we launched in 2012, we initially focused very much on the Ruby on Rails community, and experience there was paramount. We focused on making things super simple, and it worked. It caught on, and we started growing. And as you can imagine, as many other startups also do, we experienced growth where we needed to scale, we needed to rewrite system, we needed to re-engineer things, and that kept us very busy for a good amount of years, maybe up to 5 years. Um, and what happened then? Well, essentially, we started acquiring customers that had some very specific needs. That there were like bigger teams that had their own ways of working, and the pipeline that can run multiple parallel jobs in the CI part of the pipeline, and a simple couple of jobs in the CD part of the pipeline just didn't work for them well enough. So what we did is with all the experience that we have acquired over previous 5 years, we started engineering Semaphore from scratch, and it was a full rewrite. And for you who have some experience in the software industry, it's one of those risky moves, but it worked out for us actually pretty well because we changed things from the ground up and make sure that those would scale to any kind of a special configuration of like CI with multiple conditions, dependencies, and then with CD pipeline where you can chain multiple pipelines together, parameterize them, and yeah, follow the whole continuous delivery process. And it was great. It worked out. It took a lot of time, but in 2019 we launched Semaphore 2.0. One of the main things that started happening is that we started acquiring customers that we could only dream of before. Those were teams that were large engineering teams that had multiple applications running on very different clouds with very different workloads, and it was great. It was great until um, business just came and said, engineers are super happy, that's great, we just want this, but hey, we have these business requirements, we have these very strict regulatory compliance security requirements that we also need to satisfy. So we dived into that. We wrote the whole RBAC with groups, custom roles, various kinds of mappings, and control features. After that came a lot of work in the security domain and the control of who can do what within the application, plus the whole suite of various logging and provisioning mechanisms, audit logging, and so on. And it did satisfy I would say all of the requirements for many customers. But then we experienced another way of customers that we were not ready for at that time, which was just the need to run everything themselves. They just have such a regulatory and compliance requirements that it's easier to satisfy all of those if they would just move the Semaphore as a whole into their private cloud or on-prem or wherever they want to run it. And we did that. And in 2022, we launched Semaphore on-prem, which satisfied all of those requirements, and just put us in a position where we can work with super exciting team and companies and continue to scale and evolve with them. And that kind of concludes this part of the history. Present day. What do we have here? We have on x-axis we have this closed source, open source, and on epsilon we have requires heavy lifting or is refined and easy to use. There are software solutions today that can be mapped to each of these four quadrants. So let's dive in and see what do we have here. So in this lower left quadrant we have Google and AWS. Big public clouds, they tick the box. They have some kind of solution to do CI and CD within their cloud. It's not in the DNA of these public cloud providers to pay a lot of attention to polish and how easy it is something to use. So yeah, these tools exist. You might use them if you don't cannot use anything else for whatever reason. So yeah, let's move on from there and see what else is available. In the open source quadrant, we have Jenkins, GitLab CI. There are other tools here, or I would say more of a projects. So there is like a Tecton or Concourse CI that exist for a number of years, but those are more in the category of a project that requires super heavy lifting. So unless you are literally IBM or Sony or organization of that scale, it just doesn't make sense for you to run those kinds of tools and build all the additional tooling that is required to be happy with such a tools. Then we are moving into this quadrant of closed source and a bit more refined tools. So we have Microsoft GitHub Actions. Essentially, they tick the box through the competition with the GitLab. Do they have CI inside built in? They do. They worked on it for a while, and yeah, now they don't evolve it so much anymore. Then we have Circle CI, about the same age as Semaphore, who is focused essentially mainly on the CI. And then we have Semaphore. One of our core values forever was great UI and UX experience and making a super refined product. So we invested a lot there. And yeah, this is the quadrant that we operate in for over a decade now. And what is obvious to us today is that in this open source and refined and easy to operate, there is really nothing that you can reach for. So this is kind of the third major evolution of our product, where we want also to operate in this quadrant and just tackle the market of people that want to run the software themselves. They are maybe a medium-sized company of a couple of dozen people, and Semaphore Community Edition could just tick all the boxes for them, and they could just forget about these open source tools that are unrefined and require crazy amount of energy and effort to operate. So let us walk through the editions of Semaphore and see which things are changing, what's staying the same, and how it can all work together. Semaphore Cloud, our initial edition, most successful one. Zero maintenance, high performance CI/CD. You just jump in. You have the cloud machines. You have the caching, artifacts, SLAs. A lot of things just taken care of you. What's staying the same here? Well, it's pretty much all staying the same. We are supporting our customers in this domain as we did so far. Has the great reliability. We have fast and personalized support. And generally the release cycles that we work closely with the customers through technical previews, betas, and then eventually features landing into the GA. So there's really nothing that's changing there. One element which will become better is that open source and open core that we'll have will facilitate faster collaboration, innovation with people, with other um, people from the industry. So yeah, we keeping the Semaphore Cloud as it is, and it's great, and it should just become better. Moving from here, we have the Enterprise Edition. So Enterprise Edition, as we spoke about, is aimed at organizations that really have those strict regulatory compliance, security requirements. No major changes there. So all the enterprise features staying there. No movement. Great 24/7 SLA-backed support. Um, and yeah, in the realm of becoming better, so source of all of these enterprise features will become available. Some are available even today. Some will become available over the next weeks and months. And another major thing that is happening is that we want to gradually start moving towards monthly releases. So currently, our customers are getting new minor releases every quarter with patched versions spread in between, and we would want to progressively move towards a quicker release cycle, which will be on the monthly level. And last but not the least, we are getting to Semaphore Community Edition. So Semaphore Community Edition aimed at smaller teams that want to run their own software. All code comes under Apache 2 license. They can help us build that build together from there. It's all new. New segment of the market for us, new people, new relationships, which we are very much looking forward to establishing with whole world. What will become better? Yeah, as I said, free to download, install, modify. A lot of features coming in actually. So advanced pipelines, workflow builder, secret management. Yeah, all of those are baked in, and we are looking forward to building it forward with the thriving community. And when we are speaking about community, this is the way that we plan to get there. So to support our commitment to the community and the open source product, we are planning to switch the way that we work to building in public. This is for me personally one of the most exciting parts of this announcement. So I look forward to seeing many people running Semaphore CE. But even more than that, I look forward to working with the community and many people from our existing customer base and also outside of it. So, what does that mean in practical terms? Yeah, code which is not cloud or specific will be available. Core under the Apache 2 license and the enterprise features under commercial license, but we can collaborate on all of those parts. Our design, product, engineering docs will be available in the Git repo going forward. And yeah, relying on the good industry practices, we are going to be forming a number of special interest groups where we'll be discussing various areas. I mean, the first one that we kicked off almost like symbolically is the work on the documentation. There will be also one on the APIs and extensibility, the continuous delivery domain, and so on. So we will be meeting on some of those bi-weekly, on some monthly, and external people will be able to join also through a process that we are planning to set up. In terms of like real time and day-to-day communication and collaboration for a lot of product and engineering work, we'll be replacing Slack with our public Discord. And in terms of meetings, we are no longer going to be just keeping them in our private Google Drive with transcript, meeting notes, and so on. But all of those will be available on YouTube. Most of them on our Semaphore Backstage YouTube channel. So be sure to check it out and subscribe. So yeah, wrapping up with all of these announcements, as I already said in the very beginning, huge announcement, huge milestone for us. So yeah, looking forward to collaborating with everyone.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Semaphore Summit. My name is Tommy, and in this talk I will show you the process of installing and configuring the open source Semaphore Community Edition. You can find all the commands I used during this talk in docs.semaphoreCI.com. Just press the install Semaphore button to get started. Before starting, I would recommend that if you never use Semaphore, give it a try on the semaphoreCI.com, where you can find the cloud version. You can start a free trial without a credit card and just play around with Semaphore to see if it's a good fit for you and your team. So to install Semaphore, you're going to need two things. First, DNS domain and either an Ubuntu machine or a Kubernetes cluster. The minimum hardware required to run Semaphore is 8 CPUs and 16 gigabytes of RAM. So the first decision is to choose either a single machine or a Kubernetes cluster. Which one is better? Well, it depends. As always, there are trade-offs. For the single machine, the pros are that it's cheaper to run, it's simpler to backup and restore. You can take a snapshot of the machine, and it's easier to manage overall because it's a single machine. On the cons, we can say that we have less redundancy because we have only one machine, and if it fails, our CI platform goes down, and we have less scalability. When I talk about scalability, I'm talking about the control plane, the orchestration, not about the jobs. You can always scale horizontally using more machines, self-hosted agents. What I'm talking here is that the control plane of Semaphore has a limit. You can only scale it vertically with more hardware. On the Kubernetes side, the pros are that we have higher scalability, higher redundancy, and higher availability. These are all the things that Kubernetes brings to the table. On the cons, we have higher costs, we have higher complexity, and it's a little bit more difficult to back up and restore your system. Since the installation process looks the same for our platforms, I will be using a single Ubuntu machine so we can focus on the Semaphore installation part. Okay, let's get started. The first thing is to create a virtual machine. We are going to select Ubuntu and preferably an LTS supported machine. Then we're going to pick a machine the correct size. We need 16 gigabytes of RAM and we need 8 CPUs. So in this case, this would be the smallest machine that would fit our needs. Let me add my connection keys and let's rename the machine and create the machine. So the first thing to notice is the IP address. We need to copy. This should be a public IP address. We are going to need that for the next step. Now, before continuing, let's talk about domains. As a general rule, we recommend installing Semaphore on a subdomain. So, for example, if your domain is called example.com, the recommendation is to use something like semaphore.example.com. You can use any subdomain. Semaphore is just an example. You can even install Semaphore on your main domain without subdomains, and it will work, but it may cause problems if you want to use the same domain for other things, such as a website or a mail exchange, due to how Semaphore handles certificates and redirection. So in my case, my domain is called tomfern.com, and I'm going to install Semaphore under semaphore.tomfern.com. Now that we understand we need to install Semaphore under a subdomain, let's create that. We're going to map Semaphore to the IP address. This is the base subdomain, And we're going to create a second record called asterisk.semaphore, also to the same IP address, and this will apply to any names that appear under the semaphore subdomain on mytomfern.com domain. Now let's verify. We need to check that the IP is correct and that the wildcard domain also is responding. So anything that we put here resolve to the same IP address of our server. Now we are ready to start the installation step. Let me SSH into the server. First thing is to update our packages. And next we're going to install certbot to create our TLS certificates for our domain. Let's create one folder to keep all our configuration. We're going to create a file to contain our configuration options. First thing is to specify the domain. We are going to export a variable called domain with our subdomain. And next, we have IP address. We're going to put our public IP address for the server and source this file. So now we are going to create a TLS certificate, and we're going to create that for the wildcard domain, the domain we exported in our environment variable. And this will create a challenge for us. Let's put yes here. And this is a challenge. We need to create this record with the following value. So this is a DNS TXT record. Let's go back to our DNS console, and we're going to create first a TXT record with the challenge and the subdomain, and the content is the one we've been supplied by certbot. And before continuing with the certificate generation, let's test that we have a TXT record. Here it is, and it is correct. So we can go back to certbot and hit continue. It should work now. So if we check into the cert/live and we see our domain, we're going to see all the files. This is the full chain and the private key that we're going to use during the semaphore installation. So we have a HTTPS in our domain. Once we have created the certificates, we can delete the TXT record from our domain. The next step is to install Helm on the server. We have the installation command in the Helm docs. You can also find the same command in our docs. Let's run it here, and it should install Helm in our machine. The next thing is to install K3s. This is basically a mini Kubernetes instance you can run in a single machine. And once that's installed, we can export kubeconfig to point to the K3s file, and this should allow us to use kubectl normally to see that the cluster is running. We only have one node, but it's enough to run a semaphore in single node operation. So before going on, let's run a quick sanity check. First, ensure we have sourced our config file, that the domain variable is defined, that the IP address variable is defined and is correct. This should be the server address, and that the certificate file exists. Both the private and the public certificate file should exist. So at this point, we are ready to install some of the dependencies. The first one is to install emissary. This is a CRD that handles the ingress. And we should wait for the deployment to stabilize before passing to the next step. We can confirm that the deployment is running. We should have a few pods running on the emissary system namespace. The final step is to actually install a semaphore. We're going to use Helm. In this case, I have copied our chart here because it's not public. This is a pre-release chart, but by the time we are looking at this, you should be able to do Helm repo add and download the chart from the Helm repository. I'm going to install a semaphore from this local chart. So let's see the command that installs semaphore. It's helm upgrade. We're going to point the chart. It should take less than 20 minutes to run, and we're going to pass the IP address, the domain, set a few ingress variables, and finally define where are the certificates. We are going to basically convert these certificates to base 62 and pass them as parameters during the helm install. Let's run this command, and this should take about 10 minutes to run. So once the installation is done, we are going to head to this site for our first login. But first we need to copy and paste this command to obtain our initial credentials. So this will give us our email and password. Let's keep those in a safe place. And we can also run kubectl to get all the deployment. Every service should be ready and available. We are ready for our first login. So let's see here. We are going to pass our root email and password, and this should give us access to the instance. We are going to select semaphore, and this is our welcome page, our dashboard. We have successfully installed semaphore. Now let's see some of the tasks we should do before we start working with semaphore. Some of the things we recommend doing. The first thing is to create users, so we don't use the root account for everything. And to add people, we are going to select here the server menu, go to people, and click on add people, and this will prompt us with an email and an optional username. And we are going to get a temporary password to log in, and once we are done we should see the user here. By default, new users only have read access to the instance, so we're going to make this user the owner to have full privileges. Let's go here and log out. We're going to log in with the temporary password, and we are going to be required to create a new password. So let's set a new password here, and we should be able to access our semaphore server. And again, we are logged in, but this time we are using our personal account instead of our root account. So the next thing we should do in order to make semaphore really useful is to connect a Git provider. We're going to do that by going to here to the server menu, settings, then we select Git integration, and here we have connection to GitLab, Bitbucket, and GitHub. Let's connect with GitHub. We're going to install the GitHub app in my organization, and we can select here if we want to give semaphore access to all repositories only or only a few of the repositories. For example, let me I have one example here. Let's give access only to this repository and install the application. So what we just did is install the Semaphore app, which connects the repositories to the Semaphore. Now I can connect my personal account to Semaphore, so we can access my account from here, and we authorize. This is the last step. And as you can see, if I click on the user menu and select profile settings, now it should appear my photo from GitHub, and it should say that GitHub is connected. Now that Semaphore is connected to GitHub, let me try to create a project. We're going to create new, select GitHub, and it will show me the repository that I allowed the GitHub app to see. I can rename the project, I don't need to, and this will connect and retrieve all the information from the repository. Let's continue. Here we are going to select which agent is going to run our project. Uh, a default semaphore installation on the community edition includes one agent that runs inside the Kubernetes cluster. Inside, in this case, it's going to run as a pod in our K3s cluster in this machine. In a real Kubernetes cluster, is going to run in one of the nodes, and this comes by default. We can add more using self-hosted agents to scale up our capacity for running jobs. But let's go with the default, select this, and continue. So let's select, for example, this simple Docker workflow just to get started, and we can click customize to change the workflow before running. Um, in this case, it's simply running some echo commands. There's nothing really going on. Let's disable this one, and we don't need these blocks at this point, so we can remove them. That's all right. We have one job with simply echoes things, but some others testing if the project is running. This is good enough. Let's run, let's boot and start. And this will spin up a new pod where the commands in the job will run. If we go, we can open the job and see the output of each of the commands, just to validate everything is working. So that's it. We have the community edition installed. We can add more projects. We can edit the workflow. We can go to the server settings to create secrets. So we can create some, for example, credentials to access some uh, third-party services. We can set up notifications. We can see what roles are available and permissions. We can set up other integrations and connect with the GitLab or Bitbucket if we are uh, using a different provider. And we can manage our users here by adding our people and changing their roles. Finally, would like to give a few comments. This is our walkthrough. You can use our documentation. We have some migration guides and get started guides, or if you prefer, you can go here and follow these steps that will guide you through all the steps required, which is what we just did: connect the repositories, create a project, run a workflow, and we have all these things we can use to learn the different parts of semaphores. So there's a lot of things here and concepts if we're willing to like really dive deep into semaphore. That's all for today's talk. Thank you so much for watching. I really enjoyed installing Semaphore, and I hope you enjoyed the rest of the Semaphore Summit. It's only starting. See you out there.